Your beginner's guide incoming. Hey friends, welcome or welcome back to Francesca's Books. My name is Francesca, these are my books, and here we talk about all things thriller books. I'm your thriller girly, if you will. So I feel like there's a selection of books that are like the foundation of the thriller genre, and like most thriller readers will have read pretty much all of these books. So if you're new to the genre or you're thinking, which of these books that Francesca is talking about, then stay tuned, I'm going to dive in. In this video, I've picked one book from each author, so it kind of goes without saying you could read the rest of their backlist, and they are probably fundamental as well, but for the sake of time, and we'd probably be here for like 2 hours if I dove into most of these authors' backlists, then this is the list. So I have 8 books for you to read to become one of my thriller girlies, or guys, we don't discriminate. Out of my 8 picks, which I consider the foundation of the thriller genre, let me know in the comments how many you've read. I of course have read all of these, but I'd be interested to know if everyone agrees, and these would be their foundation to thriller picks as well. If you ask somebody off the street to recommend you a thriller book, or you said thriller, where would your mind go? Because I think the answer would be very different to the books we see on Book Talk. I personally think, and whilst I've been doing a little bit of research, if you think thriller, you think Gone Girl, right? This was like so fundamental in the takeoff of the thriller genre. I feel like the twist in this was instrumental to so many other thriller authors like getting that inspiration, whether they admit it or not. This was like the first of its kind. In terms of modern day writing, I'm sure there are other twists that have been done historically in literature that I'm not aware of, so please don't come for me. So if you've never heard of Gone Girl, this follows our 2 main characters who are married, Nick and Amy, and Amy just goes missing one day. So Nick is absolutely terrified. Where is she? What is she doing? Like, it's a classic missing person book. Until very quickly, there is a twist that is revealed that unveils manipulation, deception, revenge, all of the good stuff we love as thriller readers. The police start suspecting Nick of being the one who has unalived her or kidnapped her, and it looks as if he's been setting up, but did he actually have anything to do with it? That is what this book is about. Of course, now this is a film and has been a very, very popular film as well, so you may have seen that and not read the book. Either way, I definitely recommend reading the book. After thinking Gone Girl, my brain immediately goes next to The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I feel like this was another book that really like pushed the thriller genre to be what it is. This was actually one of the first thriller books I read when I realised that thriller books were even a genre in themselves. Before I was a really keen reader, I just thought all books were like rom-coms or like, you know, the books with like the people who have been in the war on them, like a war romance. I genuinely thought that's what reading was about. Until I found books like this, and this really like revolutionised what reading could be. So I saw this cover and thought, this ain't a romance book, let me pick it up, and it genuinely was one of the first thriller books that I ever read. So I feel like maybe for that reason I do hold it in slightly higher regard, but either way I definitely recommend you check it out. So this follows a woman who unsurprisingly is on a train. So she gets the same commuter train to work every single day, and she passes the same like back gardens of this like residential area. She knows like every signal change, she knows every house, like it's intense. Until one day she sees something like through one of the windows of these houses, and she's like, and of course, in true thriller fashion, she decides she's going to get involved. So she gets off at the stop, like near whatever it was happening, and she gets herself into some muddy water. This book is just iconic. Like, I can't fault it. It was great. So after those absolute icons, we're going to dive into books that you may have heard of more. I still think these are absolutely foundational thriller reading, and if you haven't read them already, you definitely should check them out. So this couldn't be a thriller list without mentioning the one and only Freida McFadden, and of course the book I'm going to recommend is The Housemaid. If you haven't heard of this follows an ex-con called Millie who goes to work for a really wealthy family as a nanny, a housemaid, but when she gets there, she's put up in this like tiny little attic room, even though they live in this huge mansion. Then it gets even worse when she realizes the door locks only from the outside, and she's like, guys, this is not great. Things get even more intense from there. She's basically being gaslit by the family's child. This book just goes in ways that like you don't anticipate. I feel like with every thriller book you kind of have like a little idea where it's going to go, and this one just goes in any other direction. The great thing about this one as well is it's so easy to read. Like, you will fly through it. If you've got like quite a short attention span, I would start here. So it is also a series as well, so you've got The Housemaid's Secret and The Housemaid is Watching somewhere else on my shelf. And then if you love that author and want to check out some more books by her as part of your foundation to thriller reading, I would also recommend Never Lie. This was also a fantastic read. But if you're thinking, I've read those really popular books by Freida McFadden, like where should I go next? I would also recommend her book, Do Not Disturb. This is definitely one of her lesser known books, but actually one of my favourite. It definitely ranks in my top 5 out of the 23, 24 psychological thrillers that she's written. Another book that you absolutely cannot miss as part of this list is The Silent Patience by Alex Michaelides. This book was a knockout. I absolutely loved it. This was another book that was super easy to read and also has a really unique concept. So if you've read a few other books and you're thinking, they're kind of, you know, getting familiar, missing person, rich people drama, this one is just something different for you. So this follows a woman who's unalived her husband by him in the head, and then she hasn't said a word since. She's not said why, she's not tried to like defend herself, like absolutely nothing. So she's sent to a psychiatric facility where she's still not speaking until one day there's a psychiatrist called Theo and he goes, I'm gonna be the person to make her speak. So this is told from Theo's point of view, trying to get this woman Alicia to speak. She was an artist, so he tries like all forms of like mediums to just like try and get through to her, but what actually happened is quite shocking. There's also another point of view of her diary, so you do get like a little bit of her voice as well, so it's a very well-rounded and easy book to read. Then in a way that kind of combines all four of those books that we've just talked about is Verity by Colleen Hoover. It is super fast-paced, this book, really easy to read and really shocking. Then it also has like some of the subplots of The Housemaid while having the twists of Gone Girl. It is just brilliant. You may have heard of Colleen Hoover from like the romance writing space. This is one of her only books that doesn't fall into that genre, but because of the nature of it, there is some romantic subplots, which I personally enjoyed. So this follows our main character, Lowen. Believe it or not, Verity isn't really the main character in this. She's just kind of the muse. However, Verity is paralysed. She used to be a really popular author and now she obviously can't write anymore, but she has these manuscripts which kind of just need finishing so she could sell them as like her last pieces of work. So her husband recruits Lowen to ghostwrite the rest of her series. And naturally, as you would in this position, you move into the family home because why would you not? This book gets all kinds of weird. If you want something that's like super twisty and you're gonna be like thinking about for a few days, this is probably the one I'd go to. Next up is the wonderful Holly Jackson with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I absolutely love this book. So it is technically a YA thriller, but it doesn't read like YA. It kind of reads like new adult. So it follows a sixth form student who decides to write her EPQ, which for those of you that don't know is like an extended project that you could do in sixth form to like get extra credit for when you're applying to university and things, but you can do it on whatever you want. So she decides to do hers on the disappearance of like the former popular girl of their high school. So as you can imagine, there is a lot of unhappy people because she's digging into the past of one of these students that was unalived. I feel like this is one of the easiest books in this list to read, so if you're after something that you can kind of read pretty quickly, I think this one would be it, but the actual concept is brilliant and has kind of shaped what the YA thriller genre should be. This has also recently been made into a TV series with BBC and Netflix, so you can also go and check that out after you've read the book as well. And there is a further 2 books in this series as well, so if you really enjoyed it, you can like go on to read the next 2 and then you will definitely be up to scratch on your thriller reading. So after you've read those 6 books, which in my opinion are probably the most popular, there's a couple of authors which you could kind of reach for next. So one of them is B.A. Paris and the other is Lisa Jewell. So I'm going to recommend which one I think you should start with from both of those backlists. So from B.A. Paris, Behind Closed Doors is probably one that I would reach for first. This is probably more of a suspense than thriller. Of course there are twists, but it kind of leads more into suspense, I think. But like heart-pounding suspense, like you'll be on the edge of your seat suspense, not like suspense. So this follows a seemingly normal couple called Jack and Grace. They are going to all these like really lovely dinner parties and they're super happy from the outside, but it turns out that Jack is basically keeping Grace captive, like emotionally, physically. Like there's these security cameras on her all the time. She literally can't do what she wants and it is very intense and extremely abusive. And then you're basically following Grace's fight for survival, so you really are on the edge of your seat because you're seeing all these horrible things being done and you're like, but is she actually going to escape? This is quite a short one as well, so I feel like if you're really at the start of your reading journey, you could read this quite quickly. I actually have friends that were non-readers who picked this up and read it in a day because they were like, oh, we didn't realise that books could be that good. And then in terms of a Lisa Jewell recommendation, I actually asked her in person which book she recommends that readers should start with, and she herself chose Then She Was Gone.
You have so many books out, but if somebody was new and had never read a Lisa Jewell, where would you recommend that they start?
I would absolutely recommend they start with Then She Was Gone.
I think this is definitely one of her darker books, and her exact words were, if you could read this, you can read any of my books. But it still is one of my favourites for sure. So this follows a woman whose teenage daughter went missing 10 years ago. So 10 years later, she's been through absolute hell. She finally meets like a new partner and everything is going fantastically until she meets his daughter and is like, this looks like my kid. So with all that emotional turmoil, as you can imagine, she like picks up the case again and she's like, I need to know what happened to my daughter. Like, I cannot rest. I literally can't rest. So then the rest of the story is like trying to work out exactly what happened to her and what the connection is with the daughter who looks like her. this goes to crazy places. I feel like this one wasn't as twisty as some of the other thriller books in this video, but it's definitely one that was like wonderfully plotted, really, really well written, and Lisa Jewell is just a fantastic author that you should definitely dive into if you haven't checked her out already. I've read quite a lot of books by this author, so if you like that one and want to check out more by Lisa Jewell, I'd also really recommend The Night She Disappeared. This is pretty much a missing person story told from Jewell point of view, but it is wonderful and also kind of set a bit of a foundation for this type of story as well. How many of my foundational thriller reading books have you read? Would you class yourself as a thriller girly as well? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I cannot wait to see you guys next time.